Uzi gave me a powerful punch.
Morning, good morning. Well,
Zelensky declares that he has achieved his goal.
a little digression.
What is this goal? And how did he achieve it? Let's take a look, but first I'll show you a video where the draft officers are chased off a construction site. It's quite an entertaining sight with a lot of shouting. Sorry for the noise. There's a lot of running around here, and of course on a construction site, who are the people? Builders with what? With construction tools. In short, the TCC guys showed up at the wrong time in the wrong place, and they had to deal with it. It's a bit tough for them with the guys whose job is construction. So, again, there's a lot of violence here. I'll repeat, YouTube doesn't allow us to show all of this. I showed it frame by frame, but you can watch the full video in my, in my Telegram channel. Just go there. Now, I'll point my hand first by pointing your phone or tablet camera at this QR code. Or if you're watching me from a tablet or phone, there will be a link to the Telegram channel in the video description right here. Let's take a look at what Zelensky said. He says he got the result that was needed.
Digression.
He's talking about his letter to Putin. I think this is the third time I'm reminding you about this letter. It's a 3-page document and almost every paragraph is rude. He calls Putin old and incompetent, and there's a lot of other stuff said to him there, things that are basically impossible in diplomatic correspondence. And in general, no matter how much you dislike your opponent from the other side, these things used to be resolved through diplomatic means. A good example would be the many wars and the diplomatic tools that made it possible to stop them. But here we're talking about negative diplomacy, so to speak, and the person just wrote everything he thought, everything he considered funny. Whether it's KVN or not, that's for you to decide. But I've already talked about the letter. Now let's talk about the purpose of writing this letter. 2 videos ago I already said that most likely Zelensky was simply trying to make sure there would be no peace. Well, apparently that's exactly what happened, because he himself said that he got the result he wanted. What result did he get? That Putin refused to talk to him and said that the war would continue. The goals of this very conflict, of this war, will be achieved, whatever they may be. They're already contradicting themselves in their statements. Zelensky himself refused to say what exactly the result he achieved was. But he added that with this letter he wanted to show Ukraine's allies who is ready for peace and who is not. Of course, what he actually showed was the opposite, that no one is ready for peace, neither Ukraine nor Russia nor those very allies. No one needs peace. What everyone wants first and foremost is money, and to hold on to what they've already gained right now. No one wants to hand over the reins of power to someone else right now, whether we're talking about the so-called institution of the presidency. And, well, no one is going to give up their position to some other guy or woman who will also claim to be a strong leader and start ruling, right? Everyone wants to rule in their own way. They're used to it, and Zelensky holds all the cards. It's already the 8th year of this very rule, during which, as he said, there's no chaos, no guilt, and the dollar at 40 or 45, which just went up the day before yesterday, also doesn't exist. What Zelensky has achieved is generally clear, and here are the results. In Zaporizhia, in Odessa, in Kiev, there are victims, houses have been destroyed, industrial facilities have been destroyed, and there were many attacks. So, at 2 a.m., Vilnyansk in the Zaporizhia region was attacked. In the Zaporizhia region in Odessa, there was also an attack at around 2 a.m. by strike drones. 2 residential buildings were destroyed. Air defense was working, the drones were moving. Well, and here there was a lot going on. There were guided bombs, drones, and all of this was moving toward Ukraine. Ukraine also responded by attacking Russia. There were 250 drones, and on top of that, there was also Zelensky. Yesterday, he started threatening that they would send ballistic missiles to Russia, saying that they're almost ready, so most likely they'll be sent soon. They said that flight tests are ahead and that it will take about a month to finalize these ballistic missiles. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Maybe they'll buy and relabel products, or maybe they're making something themselves. But these are the threats we're hearing. Powerful, powerful work. And what's most interesting here is that many European and even American publications have started writing about a turning point in the war. They say that now Ukraine is about to make a move. There, the border is smoking for 100 stops wide. We'll bite into the enemy's flesh with our teeth, and we'll divide everything that can be divided, and then we'll divide that too, and we'll win with all the forces available. And then suddenly Kuleba appeared. He's the one who basically also belongs to the Hawks camp. He once stated that Ukraine would win with the help of those very entrenching shovels, the handles from the shovels. And then, when he was fired, he decided that instead of spending time, it would be better to advertise some restaurants. Sorry, Baba Paraskas. He went there, ate something, and talked about what a cool restaurateur he was, how much he loved Ukraine. Then he was graciously accepted back into Zelensky's circle. But despite the fact that he started saying how good Zelensky was, suddenly he says, guys, the war isn't over yet. And what they're telling you that it's over and that the border is already 90 pairs wide, or maybe even more, that's not true. And that's extremely interesting. Here's Kuleba himself, and he's telling you everything. It's surprising, but the fact is that this person still in Zelensky's inner circle, given who he is saying that the war really isn't ending. And that's really the case. Sorry for using the word really so often.
I don't want to be a buzzkill who stops people from giving advice, but no.
Well, we've all gotten used to Kuleba, because when he was stopping people from giving advice, at least the signature was Sibiga's back when he was still Kuleba's deputy, about not issuing foreign passports to men. That's why all the negativity that could be poured out was poured out. And now most of those who suffered from all this have a very negative attitude toward Kuleba, including myself. So there's no need to talk about Dushnila or all the relationships where I'm strongly negative, but still, once again, let's get back to the video.
First of all, in November we will return again to the narrative about how we all can survive the winter.
This is in November, saying that there will be a narrative about how to survive the winter. And here I have also said many times that for officials, for the majority, snow in winter and cold in winter are something unimaginable. Can you imagine it snows in winter, or it could be -2 or -10 degrees? Officials run around and shout, "Oh my God, what should we do? Where did this come from?" Just like people in Africa who have never seen snow. Or there are also cats like tigers and lions stepping on the snow. I mean, not Syrian tigers, of course, but for example, Indian tigers. And they're surprised by what happens. Well, that's about how it is for public utilities, and of course, for officials, it's surprising too. They touch the snow with their fingers, thinking, "Oh my God, what is this? Maybe a disaster." But
nowhere in human history has there ever been a case where the turning points of a war were determined at the very moment when something happened.
that's also true, yes, here. Well, partly it's true, partly it's not. Because, for example, the turning point in the war with Nazi Germany was visible. There were several victories in a row. And after that, it was basically clear that this was the turning point, especially when the fascist troops started to retreat. Here, well, nevertheless, Kuleba is partially right, because sometimes these turning points, so to speak, are not noticeable.
Did Zhukov come to Stalin in Stalingrad after the liberation of the city and tell him about the turning point in the war? Or Manstein?
Yes, and it was already clear this was the war's turning point. But here you don't need to be a genius to understand that if you've already liberated Stalingrad from the USSR's point of view, then the war is already, well, not quite over, but close. But there were still a few years left until it was over, and now it's finished. Then he called Hitler and said, "Comrade Hitler, the elections will take place when the turning point is over."
Подзвонив Гітлеру і сказав, товариш Гітлер, вибачте, стався поворотний момент.
No, this logic isn't very strong.
No, Ukraine twisted everything, and now it'll reach the Kremlin. This is just wishful thinking.
See, but this is better to listen to. So he's saying that all the statements from these friendly leaders, these bloggers, those from the presidential office who get money, grants and all that, don't mean much. Those who say like now we'll get going and Iturup and Sakhalin and Vladivostok, everything will be ours and then we'll even reach the Indian Ocean. And again, the logical objection is, where will you get it from? You were given money just to barely resist, weren't you? But as for an offensive, none of that will work. You need much more extensive resources there, and of course I mean both financial and military ones. Plus, you need a lot of people, whom these allied leaders also call a resource. Well, and Kuleba comes to the right conclusion here that there won't be any retreat by Russia right now, nor any rushing forward from Ukraine. That is, this is a positional warfare which is caused by the presence of these drone-covered kill zones, and there are a huge number of drones on the front right now. This war will not end. It's positional warfare. If in the First World War you could sit on the front line for several months and nothing would happen, now, basically, it's the same. Only back then it was because of equal forces, and now it's because of drones. Maybe one side even has more shells or rockets than the other. But now everything has changed so much. The way war is conducted, the tools, the strategy, the tactics, that as a result, neither side prevails.
I understand that for some viewers and listeners, this is a very helpful story for their mental state, and I agree. If it makes life easier for people, then by all means listen and read, but you have to keep a cool head.
But here, yes, you definitely need to have a cool head and keep it. That's also true. Surprisingly, Kuleba actually expressed 2 or 3 correct thoughts. Usually when you listen, you wonder where people like that even come from. Then there's also an interesting thing here from the point of view of another Ukrainian figure, well, not a government official, but someone close to the government.
There is a shortage of workers here, and the prospect of open borders really sometimes looks threatening in a different way.
Here, a man is talking about the fact that this is a very long video, 2 minutes, but he starts by talking about opening the borders. It's not scary. He recalls that abroad, journalists mention that there are now 8 million Ukrainians abroad, and these are primarily economically active Ukrainians. So what does that mean? This means that these are primarily not children or pensioners who don't always work, and in the case of pensioners and children, they never work at all. If these are children, but 8 million economically active Ukrainians are people who work, who bring benefits to the country they are in, because they become part of that country's economic system. The man is silent. Then he's asked a logical question. Well, if the borders are opened, won't even more people leave? He says no, basically only a few will leave. He starts listing how many hundreds of thousands might leave, and he's told that, well, most likely 1.5 million economically active people will leave. To that he is silent, actively silent. But that was a spoiler. Yeah, it's interesting. Again, he was invited to the studio, but they didn't teach him how to speak or give him any notes, and he gets confused in his statements. Why? Of course, that's a rhetorical question on the telethon, but it does seem odd.
The fact that, well, Kippa, this doesn't indicate that there's still some category of Ukrainian of the graceful. Well,
left, as far as I remember, there was a figure mentioned of 400 or 440,000.
That's not much for someone like him. Come on, leave. 20 million remain. It's not a big deal. He said before that for Ukraine it's not a big deal, even though, God willing, about 20 million people are left in Ukraine.
It doesn't seem like it.
That's not a little. It's a lot. I think that just as easily another 1.5 to 2 million could leave. And I left once again.
You said 1.5 to 2 million, and before that he was saying that it's not a big deal.
Ukraine is probably a catastrophe.
Well, it turns out that's about another 5%. Even if you count from 20 million, 2 million is 10% for us. And 1 million is accordingly 5% for us. So 1.5 million is about 7 or 7.5%. Well, yeah, in general, another 7% of economically mature and active people will leave. And for a man, that's something to think about. So, the ones who are left are either those who just get money for nothing. We're talking about those power marathon types, barbershop owners, and so on. And we're talking about those who simply can't leave because they don't have the opportunity, or they're poor, or their job keeps them there.
In short, that's about 1.5 to 2 million working people, considering that we have 10,200,000 who are not retirees.
Retirees, that's correct. But it's not retirees who are leaving.
10 million retirees, wow. Honestly, I've never heard that number before. But if there are 20 million people in the country, and 10 million of them are retirees, and I assume about 2 million are children, then what's left? 8 million out of which 1.5 to 2 million leave, as he says. And that's not scary. Well, yeah. What else?
The thing is, well, I'll repeat myself. At some point they gave the numbers, not about government employees, but about how many real business people we have who pay taxes and actually support the budget. It's about 1 million people.
1 million economically active entrepreneurs. Wonderful, wonderful. That's a fitting conclusion to all of this. Well, now let's take a look. Besides those guys we've seen, our favorite powerful leaders. Because how could we not watch them on this wonderful morning? For example, you likely haven't seen many things in a while. First, let's review what's happened, then discuss what's next. Here we have everything. The first part is powerful. And now let's take a look at Beit Sitia. This is Beit Sitia, the fat Beit Sitia, who is sitting in some little room. Well, by the way, this actually looks more like combat conditions. No, the conditions themselves look similar because there's some kind of isolation chamber here, and it's clearly not a studio. Although, knowing our media people, they could set something like this up in a basement somewhere and then claim it's a trench. Well, she herself, of course, doesn't really look military. Makeup, nails, manicure, face, I was going to say, not disfigured. All right, let's not talk about it. So, I mean, no scratches, no signs of weight loss, nothing. Clearly the woman is walking around outside freely. She's obviously not walking in the woods, so it's a rather strange choice, but let's see what she has to say. Oh yes, these are all draft dodgers. Now with Zhenya is a woman who doesn't sing, but at least she's trying to feed us some line here. And they also styled the hair so it would look different. Apparently they wanted to show how, as some would say, through the Ukrainian Raskwevjin, but in reality they just put them together differently. And the hair is in very good condition. You can see all of this.
She draws the occupiers nearer to her homeland.
And look at the manicure, too. Look at that manicure. These are all, of course, consequences of the war, and now even manicure salons have reached these kinds of Valkyries.
How divinely this has developed.
So skinny, oh my god, oh my god. Without makeup. Of course I'm being sarcastic. Without any self-care products. There will always be some of them in some frontline medical unit or something like that. You come in and ask, do you have keratin for hair straightening? Yes. Do you have some lipstick? Yes. Please give me both of those and something else to make my skin shine. They have everything.
This is a war of appearances, and every person who walks like that influences the scales of Teresi to tip toward the enemy. It's very difficult.
Well, of course, yes, everything at once, everyone. We've defeated everyone. Chorny Cherniguz did well. We've absolutely defeated everyone. Prosiki just carves them into the bodies of the enemies, probably heading east.
You can hear it. It's a scary story. Here you need to learn how to run.
At least she learned to look at the screen. Usually they look somewhere else or off to the side. There was one guy who just couldn't look straight at all, with the mannerisms of a pickpocket. But this one looks into the camera. I think she's an aspiring actress, or maybe they took her from some TV series. The woman, Sprinteri.
And marathon runners, you need to learn how to organize your life for the long run, for the struggle. That's what some Telegram channel and TikTok are saying. Everyone is tired of the war, but often it's those far from it who feel the most exhausted.
Yeah, so it turns out that soldiers and officers actually don't get tired of the war. And here we immediately see indeed an actress who was invited, told, listen, here's a piece of paper, memorize it and read it emotionally. She managed to do that. Not bad. At least she didn't stumble or forget her lines as often as other performers. But this part about not getting tired during war is very interesting. Next, here we have some performers talking about Russia. This is also just like some SBU guy. Remember, there was an old man, former head of the SBU, now he's talking about all sorts of things. Yeah, this one says that Russia is short 1.5 million workers. Obviously, Ukraine already has enough, the economy is thriving. They don't have to send back Nepalese or Bangladeshis, the ones they're inviting to Ukraine. And keep thriving.
Already today, they are short about 1.5 million workers. That's minus 1.5 million workers, specifically workers. I'm not talking about the general population, just people. There aren't enough of them at enterprises of every kind, regardless of ownership, and they were afraid that if another 200 or 300,000 were taken away, the Russian economy could just collapse completely.
Yeah, a complete collapse is really something. But if you take into account how many people live in Russia, how many people live in Ukraine now, and the armies are roughly equal, then if we start looking again according to preliminary estimates, that previous guy who was talking about how many people left the country, like 10 million have left, another 2 million are expected to leave, and then some more are in the army, at the front. I don't mean barbershop guys who never had any significance for the economy anyway. I mean real soldiers and officers, and there are about the same number of them as in Russia, maybe even more now. And here's the question, so uncle, does Ukraine have enough workers or what? Maybe you should first think about what's wrong in your own country. Suggest some ways to solve the problem. I mean, not military, but at least social and economic ones. And then, when you've achieved success, when your economy has taken off, you can mock other countries. In that case, well, fine, if you really want to mock others, but when your own cow is dying, it's pretty strange to look at someone else's withered lawn and laugh at them. Well, what else? Yeah, I think we've had enough of powerful leaders for today. We've already looked at plenty. Write in the comments whether you want to see more or less of them, and of course share your thoughts on the current situation as well. It would be really interesting to see, and I'll talk about it in one of the upcoming episodes. So that's it. Goodbye, everyone. Bye.
Ukraine is now the center of influence, and now a lot of issues will need to be coordinated not in Brussels, Paris, or Berlin, but with Ukraine. And that's why, well, okay, there's money, well, call it whatever you want. When you have missiles with a range of 2,000 or 3,000 kilometers, you really don't care what alliances you're in. You can build alliances yourself, the ones that are convenient for you, the ones that benefit us, not just the ones someone else came up with. So you have to understand that, well, there are huge problems with money.